Sometimes love doesn't arrive as a promise or a poem. It comes as distance, silence, and hesitation. The most complicated kind of love is not the one that hurts loudly, but the one that hides quietly behind fear. When an avoidant loves you, they won't always say it, but they'll fight battles within themselves just to stay. For the avoidant individual, love does not arrive as a gentle invitation. It comes as a disturbance to the delicate balance of control they have built within themselves. Their entire emotional framework is designed around maintaining safety through distance, and when love appears, it challenges that foundation at its core. Love requires surrender, openness, and vulnerability. Three things that an avoidant has spent years, perhaps decades, avoiding. To them, attachment has never been a comforting place. It has been a battlefield where needs were unmet and where closeness meant exposure to pain. So when love enters, it is not received as warmth. It is felt as a threat, something capable of undoing the walls that protect their fragile sense of stability. At the heart of this reaction is a profound conflict between their need for connection and their need for control. Control is their lifeline. It gives them a sense of predictability, an illusion that they can keep chaos at bay. But love, in its truest form, dissolves boundaries and demands trust. It calls one to risk being seen. For the avoidant, this is terrifying. They have spent their lives managing emotions by suppressing them, distancing themselves from need, and intellectualizing feelings so they don't have to be felt. When love knocks, it threatens to open doors they've kept locked, doors behind which live their fears of abandonment, rejection, and inadequacy. To love for them feels like standing at the edge of a cliff. There's beauty in the view, but also danger in the fall. So they step back, not because the view isn't worth it, but because they cannot yet trust the wind. When they begin to love, they often feel trapped between two instincts, the desire to move closer and the compulsion to escape. This inner tension shows up in their behavior as hot and cold dynamics, sudden withdrawals, or subtle emotional disengagements. Yet beneath these actions lies something tender, a deep, unspoken hope that love won't hurt this time, that closeness won't cost them themselves. Love, to an avoidant, symbolizes surrender, and surrender is synonymous with losing control. To lose control means reliving the helplessness of their past, the moments when dependence brought disappointment, when vulnerability was met with neglect, when love felt conditional. Their mind recalls those lessons vividly. Love equals danger, intimacy equals pain. So, when someone gets too close, their body remembers before their mind does. They pull away not because they want to, but because their nervous system is wired to protect them from emotional exposure. It's an instinctive form of self-preservation, but what is often misunderstood is that avoidants are not incapable of love. They love deeply, though rarely in the way others expect. Their love is guarded, restrained, hidden behind gestures that seem minor but are monumental for them. They might not say, "I love you" easily, but they will ensure your safety, your comfort, your peace. They will love you through structure, through quiet consistency, through actions that allow them to remain safe while still giving a piece of themselves away. This controlled expression of love helps them maintain equilibrium, allowing them to feel connected without fully surrendering their autonomy. When they fall in love, it disrupts their internal order. Suddenly, their emotional world becomes unpredictable, and this unpredictability terrifies them. They might start analyzing their feelings, questioning their partner's intentions, or retreating into solitude. What they are really doing is trying to reestablish a sense of control over their emotions, over the pace of intimacy, over the vulnerability that love demands. To love, for them, is to walk a tightrope between longing and fear. They want closeness but not dependence, affection but not engulfment, intimacy but not exposure. Every step toward love is, therefore, a step toward their own undoing. And yet, despite their resistance, love still finds a way to seep through the cracks. It touches them in the spaces where control weakens, moments of laughter, small gestures of care, the silent comfort of shared presence. These moments unsettle them, for they reveal the truth they've long suppressed, that love is not meant to be controlled, only experienced. But until they learn to sit with that truth, love will remain both their greatest desire and their greatest fear. When an avoidant person begins to love, they rarely move closer. Instead, they create distance. This behavior can appear cold or disinterested, but beneath it lies an intricate psychological defense built over years of emotional conditioning. To them, closeness feels dangerous because it awakens old memories of dependence that once led to disappointment or pain. Emotional distance becomes a form of protection, a way to experience affection without the unbearable risk of exposure. When they feel love, they instinctively step back, as if too much proximity might drown them in emotions they do not know how to manage. This distance is not rejection, though it often feels like it to the one who loves them. It is a silent cry for safety, a shield crafted from fear rather than indifference. The avoidant fears that emotional intimacy will lead to loss of self or control, that loving someone too openly will give the other person power to wound them. So they love in ways that allow them to remain unseen. They will listen but not reveal, care but not confess, be present but emotionally guarded. Every gesture of affection is measured, every word weighed carefully to ensure they don't give away too much of their inner world. Their love language is restraint. It manifests not through effusive words or grand displays of emotion, but through subtle forms of presence. They might show up when you need help, fix something for you, or quietly remember what matters to you. These are not casual acts. They are profound indicators of their investment, expressions of affection that allow them to remain safe within their boundaries. The paradox is that their love often looks like absence. The avoidant may pull away after moments of closeness because the warmth feels unbearable, almost foreign. Emotional connection for them can feel like standing too close to a fire. It's beautiful, but the heat reminds them of old burns. When they withdraw, they are not punishing the other person. They are soothing their own nervous system. Love triggers anxiety in them, a fear of enmeshment and dependence. To cope, they retreat into solitude, where they can reestablish emotional order. In this quiet space, they regain control over their inner chaos. Yet even there, they think of the person they love. They miss them in silence, though they may never say it. Their detachment is not emptiness. It is self-regulation. They love through avoidance because avoidance feels safe, predictable, and manageable. However, this emotional distance creates confusion and pain for their partner, who often mistakes it for disinterest. The partner may wonder why vulnerability seems to push the avoidant further away instead of bringing them closer. The truth is that the avoidant's emotional map is inverted. Intimacy equals risk. Distance equals safety. So the more they love, the more they may feel compelled to protect themselves by withdrawing. Love doesn't dissolve their barriers. It often intensifies them because it awakens the very vulnerability they've worked their whole lives to suppress. Inside the avoidant, there is a quiet longing for connection, but it is buried beneath layers of fear. They crave to be understood without needing to expose their wounds. They wish for closeness that does not demand confession, love that does not require the surrender of independence. In their world, silence becomes a form of expression, distance becomes devotion, and restraint becomes their way of showing care. What looks like coldness is often deep sensitivity wrapped in fear. The avoidant feels emotions as intensely as anyone else, perhaps even more so, but their instinct is to hide them, to protect what little control they have over their internal world. Their emotional distance, then, is not the absence of love, but the shape love takes when safety is a greater need than intimacy. To love an avoidant is to recognize that beneath their quiet exterior lies a storm of feelings they cannot yet allow to surface. And to be loved by one is to see that their silence is not emptiness, but a shield, one that, over time and with patience, might slowly lower when they finally feel safe enough to stay. Love, for the avoidant, is an experience of deep contradiction. It pulls them toward closeness while simultaneously awakening a primal fear of it. This is the paradox that defines their emotional world, the conflict between desire and fear. When they fall in love, they feel the warmth of connection, the comfort of being seen, and the beauty of belonging. Yet beneath that sweetness lies anxiety, because love threatens to dismantle the walls they have spent years constructing. They crave intimacy, but associate it with loss of control, with the possibility of rejection, and with the fear of being consumed by someone else's emotions. Every moment of closeness carries both longing and danger. This paradox manifests in behaviors that are confusing to those who love them. They may reach out affectionately one moment and then retreat the next. Their messages become inconsistent, their emotional availability unpredictable. They might say they want connection but act in ways that create distance. This inconsistency is not manipulation. It is the natural expression of an internal tug-of-war. They are torn between the part of them that wants to merge with another and the part that insists survival depends on separation. For them, love is not simply about emotion, it is about self-preservation. To open up is to risk being hurt, and to avoid that hurt, they instinctively limit how much they reveal or rely on another person. When avoidants begin to care deeply, their fear intensifies because love exposes their hidden vulnerabilities. They start to feel emotions they cannot easily control, affection, tenderness, dependency, and these sensations feel foreign, almost dangerous. Their instinctive reaction is to suppress or rationalize these feelings, convincing themselves they are better off detached. Yet, no matter how much they suppress, love persists. It seeps through their defenses in small gestures, in the way they listen, protect, or quietly care. This duality keeps them trapped, wanting to love freely but terrified of losing themselves in the process. They often seek control to manage this tension, by controlling the pace of intimacy, by setting emotional boundaries, or by retreating into solitude. They try to balance desire with safety. But control, in love, is an illusion. The more they attempt to manage their feelings, the more they realize how powerful those feelings are. This realization frightens them because it exposes the one truth they spend their lives avoiding, that love cannot be tamed. It must be surrendered to. For the avoidant, surrender feels like annihilation, the erasure of autonomy, the collapse of their carefully maintained independence. Yet paradoxically, this surrender is also what their soul longs for most. Their love, therefore, appears indirect. Instead of words of affection, they offer acts of service. Instead of emotional confessions, they offer reliability. They may express care through practical help, through making your life easier, or through ensuring your safety. These subtle acts are their way of loving without losing control, of expressing devotion without exposure. Beneath their calm exterior lies a constant inner dialogue, a debate between heart and mind, vulnerability and defense, closeness and escape. Every step toward intimacy is a quiet battle between wanting to connect and wanting to survive. The avoidant's paradoxical love often leads to emotional exhaustion, both for themselves and their partner. They feel guilty for withdrawing, yet unsafe when they stay close. Their partner feels confused, unsure whether they are loved or merely tolerated. But within the avoidance restraint is something deeply human, a desperate hope that love can exist without danger, that they can be close without being consumed. It is not that they do not want love, they want it profoundly. They simply do not yet know how to receive it without fear. This paradox of desire and fear defines the avoidance path through intimacy. They live suspended between two opposing instincts, one pulling them toward union, the other pushing them toward solitude. Love for them is both the light they seek and the fire they fear will burn them. Their journey is not about learning to love, for they already do. It is about learning to trust that love does not have to destroy what it touches. When an avoidant loves, their affection is rarely spoken aloud. It is not declared in dramatic gestures or constant words of reassurance, but hidden in quiet actions, subtle signs, and moments that easily go unnoticed. They do not love through expression, they love through presence. Their affection emerges in small, careful ways: acts of service, protective instincts, silent observation, and loyalty that endures even when they cannot voice their feelings. This hidden form of devotion is the only way they know how to love without feeling exposed. For them, to openly confess emotion feels dangerous, but to act on it quietly feels safe. Their gestures are deliberate and understated. They might remember the way you take your coffee, fix something you mentioned once in passing, or show up when you least expect it. These acts, though seemingly ordinary, are deeply meaningful because they represent vulnerability translated into action. Every small gesture is a compromise between their longing for connection and their fear of it. They give what they can without crossing the invisible boundary that protects their inner world. In their silence, there is care. In their distance, there is consideration. But these expressions of love often go unnoticed because they do not resemble the traditional ways people demonstrate affection. Their love is built on observation rather than declaration. They study the one they love carefully, noting moods, preferences, and subtle shifts in behavior. This quiet awareness allows them to meet needs before they are spoken, to comfort without asking how, to protect without being asked to. Such behavior stems from a place of deep emotional intelligence restrained by fear. The avoidance love is not performative, it is purposeful. They give in ways that feel safe to them, through control and predictability, because emotional spontaneity threatens to unravel the order they rely on. This kind of love can be easily misinterpreted. To an outsider, it may appear emotionless or mechanical, but for the avoidant, it is an act of profound courage. Each time they care, they are stepping into the territory that once brought them pain. Each act of devotion is a rebellion against the instinct to withdraw. Their silence is not emptiness, it is the sound of restraint, fighting against the impulse to flee. They cannot always say, "I love you," but they might show it through small consistencies: the way they keep their promises, the way they listen, the way they remain when every part of them wants to run. For them, vulnerability does not come in confessions of emotion, but in the act of staying connected despite fear. The avoidant's hidden devotion is built on endurance, not expression. They will not always tell you how they feel, but they will show it in the way they take responsibility, in the stability they provide, and in the effort to keep peace rather than provoke chaos. Their love seeks safety, not intensity. It is not fiery or dramatic. It is steady, quiet, and enduring. At times, this form of love can feel one-sided to their partner, who might crave verbal affirmation or emotional warmth. But beneath the avoidant's calm exterior is a storm of feeling they struggle to manage. They care deeply, but fear being consumed by the depth of that care. They show devotion through control because losing control equates to vulnerability, and vulnerability reminds them of a time when love was unsafe. So they love by managing it, by keeping their affection in forms they can regulate. When they protect you, provide for you, or ensure your comfort without being asked, that is their language of love. When they stay even after conflict, that is their confession. They love not through emotional exposure, but through action, through subtle reliability that speaks louder than words they cannot say. Their devotion may be hidden, but it is real, woven into every quiet moment, every gentle gesture, and every decision to remain close despite the instinct to disappear. To understand their love is to look beyond words and see the tenderness embedded in what they do, not in what they say. When an avoidant begins to love, something profound stirs within them, a silent war between the self they have constructed and the self that love is trying to reveal. Love confronts them with everything they have spent their lives suppressing, their longing, their fear, their need, and their vulnerability. It becomes a mirror reflecting their hidden wounds, forcing them to face the shadowed parts of themselves they would rather ignore. This is not a comfortable process. It is a form of emotional alchemy where love acts as both a trigger and a teacher, awakening their deepest insecurities while simultaneously offering the possibility of healing them. For most avoidants, love is not simply an emotional experience. It is an existential challenge. It disrupts their internal order, shattering the illusion of control that has kept them safe. The moment they care deeply, they begin to feel their defenses weaken. Suddenly, the strategies that once worked, detachment, self-reliance, emotional withdrawal, no longer bring peace. Instead, they feel trapped between wanting connection and fearing it. This conflict forces them to look inward and examine the origins of their avoidance. They start to see that their fear of intimacy is not about others, but about their relationship with their own vulnerability. Love brings them face to face with their childhood conditioning, with the moments when affection was unsafe or inconsistent. It reminds them of times when they were hurt for needing too much, or when closeness led to disappointment. These buried memories rise to the surface, disguised as anxiety or mistrust. The person they love becomes both a source of comfort and a mirror reflecting their deepest wounds. In this reflection they encounter their shadow, the part of them that craves love but fears dependence, that wants intimacy but equates it with loss. This confrontation is painful because it forces them to acknowledge how fear has dictated their emotional lives. If they resist this process, love becomes suffocating. They withdraw, suppress, and detach, believing that emotional distance will restore their balance. But if they choose to stay, if they allow love to challenge them, they begin a slow transformation. This transformation is not about becoming someone different. It is about remembering who they were before fear built the walls around them. Love teaches them that vulnerability is not weakness, but courage. That intimacy does not demand the loss of self, but the recognition of shared humanity. Through this realization, the avoidant starts to soften, to open, to let warmth reach places they once thought were unreachable. This transformation does not happen suddenly. It comes in quiet stages, in moments when they resist the urge to run, when they choose to stay through discomfort, when they express something genuine despite the risk. Each of these moments chips away at the armor that has long protected them. In learning to trust another, they begin to trust themselves. In allowing love to see them, they begin to see themselves more clearly. What once felt like exposure now begins to feel like connection. Through love, the avoidant is invited to evolve. They are asked to surrender control, to accept imperfection, and to let go of the illusion that safety lies in solitude. This process often feels like death to their old identity, the self that believed distance was protection. But in that symbolic death lies rebirth. They discover that love does not destroy their autonomy, it expands it. It allows them to exist fully, not as a guarded observer of life, but as an active participant in it. When avoidants face their inner conflict with honesty, love becomes more than an emotional risk. It becomes a path toward integration. It unites the fragmented parts of them that have long been at war, the part that longs for connection and the part that fears it. This integration is their healing. It is the moment when love stops being a threat and becomes a bridge back to themselves. Through the pain of exposure and the courage of staying, they learn that love was never meant to take their freedom. It was meant to teach them what freedom truly is. The love of an avoidant is not a love that dances in the open. It is a love that trembles behind walls built for protection. It is a love that fears its own depth, that hesitates between longing and retreat, that speaks in gestures instead of words. To love as an avoidant is to stand at war with one's own heart, to crave closeness while running from the vulnerability it requires. But within that struggle lies a rare kind of sincerity. Their love is not careless, it is cautious, not absent, simply guarded. Every step toward connection is a rebellion against years of emotional conditioning, a quiet act of courage that few ever see. When they choose to stay, to listen, to show up despite their instinct to withdraw, they are choosing love over fear. And that choice, though invisible, is profound. Love transforms them, not by demanding that they become someone else, but by teaching them to trust that they can be loved and still remain free. In the end, the avoidance journey is not only about learning to love another, it is about learning to love themselves enough to stop hiding. Their love may not be loud, but it is real, delicate, enduring, and brave in ways words will never capture.